I have a friend who suspected that she's pregnant. She just freshly tested that she's positive. So she asked me for pregnancy tips. I have some because I have quite an experience since I have 2 kids. This is Kate, she's born in 2015, and then this is Jade, who is born in 2020. So the 2 of them, they are born in 2 different hospitals. Kate is delivered in a private hospital, and then Jade, she's delivered in a public hospital by 2 different gynaes, and in fact they are even delivered by 2 different delivery methods, cesarean and then natural birth. In this video, I'll briefly tell you the 2 very different experiences that I had with my 2 kids, and then I'll later share a superb cost-saving tip. I'll start with the bad experience for Kate, who's delivered in 2015. How we selected our gynae is that we basically just Google online, we search for the best gynae Yishun, and this guy came up. He looks pretty good, like very experienced, not too old, not too young. And so we selected him, and indeed he's like very popular. Every time you go to the clinic, it's so full. You have to wait very long just for your checkup. So anyway, in 2015, actually after the delivery, I wrote a blog post about this bad experience. Let me show you so that it's easier for me to recount the events that happened. So this is really the story about this evil gynae. What happened is that on week 37, when we went for the checkup, the gynae told us 2 problems. One is that this thing called the amniotic fluid index is low, and then the fetus growth is stagnant. And so, without asking for opinion, he asked us to go to the hospital that night to have induced labor. We were like so shocked, or like, we said we have to think about it. But then he's like not very happy, and he impatiently just rescheduled us 2 days later for another checkup. So when I go back home, I research on AFI, and my conclusion is that there's nothing to worry about. There's not enough evidence to support induction just because of that. So for the next checkup 2 days later, the AFI is still low, but just slightly is 4.95. The baseline is 5 cm. And so I still declined to go for the induced labor, and this time he referred us to do this 1-hour Doppler test at the hospital, and we have to pay extra to do this test, which is so-called like more accurate. So the doctor there will take their time to measure all those fluid pockets. It turns out that the result is okay. The doctor there actually congratulated us that yes, fine. So when we go back to the gynae with the good result, he will tell us that okay, yeah, then he don't push us for induced labor anymore. And then the next thing he said is that he will schedule us for our next checkup, and then he informed us that he will be overseas for a conference, so he cannot be the one attending to us. So he was just informing us that there's a friend of his, another gynae, who will do the checkup, and if it happens that we need him to deliver, then the friend will do the delivery. So I start to piece together, and I'm thinking maybe that's why he was pushing us to do the induced labor. At the clinic, I saw a lady, and it seems like she needs to go for delivery soon too. So we chatted with her, and it turns out she needs to do induced labor that night, and for exactly the same reason, AFI is low. So I hope you understand why that happened. Or perhaps if you put yourself in the shoe of a private gynae, if your interest, your motivation is all in the money, then of course you'll prefer to have CSEC, because CSEC is scheduled surgery. You will have very predictable schedule, and CSEC is more expensive, so you actually charge more, you earn more. And if you're like this gynae, if you need to be away for 10 days, then what do? One of the things you could do is that you can try to finish all these jobs before you go for your holiday, your break. So if you think about that, yeah, that's the problem with private gynae, because they are one-man show. They usually is their own boss working for their own clinic. So anyway, at week 40 we went for a C-sec. There are a few reasons. One of it is because the Chinese 7 month is coming, so my wife wants the baby born before that, and also the baby is 3.9 kg, so my wife is very scared that it's very hard to deliver via natural birth. But then I was asking my wife yesterday, if we are to make the decision again, she would now choose natural birth because the recovery is much better. So now let's move on to the good experience. For Jade, she was born in 2020. For Jade, we of course never use back the evil gynae. And this time around, we also don't Google, we ask around. So there's a friend who works in a hospital and she highly recommend this doctor who is very good in NUH. So let me show you. So this is Prof. Biswa. He delivered for Jade, and he's very good and experienced and can handle very complex cases. And the thing is that this time we selected NUH, which is a public hospital. And there is a very big difference between public and private hospital. And for NUH, they are very pro natural birth. If you know, public hospitals have more facilities, so in case you have any complexity that comes or any emergencies that's required, public hospital has all the facilities for that. And I think the most important thing is that in public hospital, the doctor pay is not determined by how many deliveries he did. Unlike that private gynae, he's working for the for public hospital, there might be some cons that you have heard of, like longer queue, but that's not really true for me. And in the private clinic that I went to, is super long queue. Every time I go is at least 1 hour wait. And the worst off for those private clinics, the waiting area is so small. For husband, usually you cannot sit because there's not enough seat. And I think for now COVID, it must be worse. The husband probably cannot be inside the clinic, has to go outside and wait. Whereas for NUH, it's so much better. They have this big lobby where the husband should be able to find a seat to sit down comfortably. And what's more, in NUH, the nearby there is the Cambridge Mall. I can even go to Starbucks, I can buy things. So I highly recommend NUH. For someone like me, I stay in Yishun, I travel all the way down to NUH. Now let me talk about the cost. And you need to understand that there's 3 types of patients. Let me show you. So MOH, right? Later I'll put the link for this in the description. So MOH actually is very good because they list out all the costs, or at least the average cost for all the different delivery types. And this one is for natural birth. Let's take a quick look, because you should understand that, very importantly, there are 3 costs. One is public hospital subsidized. The second is public hospital unsubsidized. And the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized is basically that if you're unsubsidized, you can stay in ward A or B1, basically 1 pax or 2 pax. And then for subsidized is B2, 6 pax or 8 pax. Plus subsidized, the fees is much lower in terms of the operation fee and all those checkups and everything. Subsidized is much lower. And then finally, there's the private hospital cost for clinics. So they are all listed in MOH. So I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to briefly tell you how much I paid for my 2 cases, just for reference, because they are not going to be very accurate. One thing is because the delivery methods are different, and there's also inflation to be accounted for. But basically, in 2015, Kate, C-sec, we paid around 10k. And then for Jade, in 2020, paid around 7k, natural birth. But now let me tell you one trick that I I learned, we never use it, but we only found out later. So in week 12, right? So I have a view here with me, so let me show you something. So in week 12, usually there's this thing called the neutral translucency NT scan. This happens in week 12 and it costs $181. This NT scan is to detect for Down syndrome, which can be very common as you are older. So you have to pay for this scan, and it's not the most accurate scan. In fact, they will ask you to choose between this, which is the cheaper one, $181, and another one that involves, I think, DNA testing, and that costs $1,000 and is like 99% accurate. So they ask you which one you choose. And it was at that point of time that we know that if you are subsidized, it will be much cheaper, because subsidized, usually the cost is like 1/3 of the unsubsidized. So for that DNA test, it will be $1,000 if you're unsubsidized. So imagine if you're subsidized, you pay only $300. And also, of course, subsidized for every checkup is actually much cheaper. And then, now, another interesting thing. Let me show you another thing, which is the package from NUH. So, this is the package. You can take up this package actually from the 22 weeks onwards. The trick here is to go to the public hospital first as a subsidized patient. So for the first 22 weeks, you are subsidized. That includes all the checkup at a cheaper rate, and also in week 12, the Down syndrome test will be at a much cheaper rate. Then on week 22, that's when you can sign up for a package. You can switch to become an unsubsidized patient. So it's at that point of time, when you sign up the package, you become unsubsidized, you can then choose the gynae that you want, a fixed gynae. That also means in the first 22 weeks, you don't have the fixed gynae, you will keep changing whichever gynae that's available. But that's also a good time for you to understand who you prefer. So now let me summarize the tips, or it can also be advised if I ever wanted to have my third kid. Number 1, choose natural vaginal birth. Don't do C-sec unless really necessary. Number 2, don't induce labels. If you know the probability that you will be successful is 50-50, but actually most of the time it's much worse. You are wasting time, pain, and then you have to pay more if you need to do the emergency C-sec later, and that is additional cost. 3, choose public hospital. I hope you already understand that private, or should I say that private gynae in private clinics, they might not work with your interests at heart. 4th, the cost-saving tips: really start as a subsidized patient and then switch to unsubsidized in week 22. So there's so much to talk about pregnancy that I haven't got time to talk about C-sec versus natural birth. They are the most exciting scenes that one could see. And also I didn't talk about like vaginal birth after cesarean, they call it VBAC. And that happens for my wife, and yeah, my wife experienced everything. In fact, she also got diabetes during pregnancy, known as gestation diabetes. I'll leave those discussions for maybe another time. Do comment if you'd like to know about those topics, and of course do subscribe and like if this has been helpful. Bye bye.